Okay, today's daf is daf samech. We're going to start at the Mishnah where we left off yesterday. Mishnah says, "Kol maaseh Yom Kippurim ha'amur ala seder imikdim maaseh lachavero lo asa klum." That any of the procedures of Yom Kippur, if they are done out of order, okay, since they were stated al haseder, since they were stated to be done in a certain order, im hikdim maaseh lachavero, if you put something before its friend, in other words, if you put it out of order, lo asa klum, then you didn't do it correctly. In other words, you didn't do anything. Literally, it means you didn't do anything. So everything that's stated al haseder, Rashi says, b'mishnatenu, anything in the Mishnah that we've read that has an order to it, if you do something out of order, it ruins it. Hikdim damasair ledamapar. So now it says, if you were to take the blood of the goat and apply the blood of the goat before the blood of the par, of the bull. Now normally what do? First, blood of the bull inside, the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Then blood of the goat. Then blood of the bull on the parochet. Then blood of the goat on the parochet. So if you instead did blood of the sa'ir, you did the blood of the goat and then the blood of the bull, so yachzor v'yazdem b'dam sa'ir lachar dam apar. So what you do is, in other words, what you did wrong was you did goat, then bull. So what can you do now? You could just do goat again, in other words, because now goat will be after bull. So it doesn't invalidate the application of the bull blood that you did, that you had done the goat before it. That doesn't invalidate it. But the goat blood is invalid because it has to be after the bull blood. Okay? So therefore, you would have to go back and apply the goat blood again. Ve'im ad shelo gamar et hamatanot shebifnim nishpach adam. If the Kohen Gadol is in the middle of doing the matanot, he's in the middle of doing the blood applications in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, shebifnim, and nishpach adam, the blood spills, yavidam acher v'yachzor batchila mibifnim, then he has to start the entire process of Kodesh HaKodeshim again. V'chen b'heichal, and similarly, if he's applying the blood to the parochet and the blood spills, he doesn't have to go back into the Kodesh HaKodeshim again. But whatever he was up to, let's say he was up to achat v'achat, achat v'shtayim, achat v'shlosh, whoops! I can't do the rest. So what does he do? He just has to start achat v'achat again. He doesn't have to start all the way from Kodesh HaKodeshim. He starts from if he was in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, he has to do the entire Kodesh HaKodeshim process again. If he's in the Hechal, he has to do the entire Hechal process again to make sure that it's done in order. He says, so it says, Yavidam acher v'yachzor batchilam b'fnim, v'chen b'echal, v'chen b'mizbeach hazahav. The same is true about the golden altar, shekulan kapra b'fnei atzman, that each one of them is considered its own unit. So we look at it as three processes. Okay, there's Kodesh HaKodeshim process, there's parochet process, there's mizbeach process. So each one of them, in and of itself, has to be complete. If the blood spills in the middle of one of them, you go back to the beginning of that process, not to the previous process. You don't have to go all the way back to Kodesh HaKodeshim. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omrim, Mimakom shepasak misham hu matchil. They're more lenient. They say, you know what? Whatever he was up to, that's where he can leave off. Meaning to say, if he did achat v'achat, achat v'shtayim, achat v'shalosh, whoops, the blood spilled, he can start with achat v'arba. He doesn't have to go to the beginning again. Okay, he can start from wherever he left off, according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Kol Maseh Yom Kippurim Amor Al Seder, Imiktim Maseh L'Chaviro Lo Asa Klum. We said in the Mishnah that any of the activities of Yom Kippur that are stated that they have to be done according to a certain order, if you put one before the other, in other words, if you did one out of order, it's invalid. Rabbi Yehuda has a qualification here, and so does Rabbi Nechemiah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Matai b'dvarim v'nasim b'vegdei Lavan. He says this rule only applies to one thing, basically, according to Rabbi Yehuda. It only applies to the Kodesh HaKodeshim. What's done in the Bigdei Lavan, in the white garments, mibifnim, inside. Rashi says, what does mibifnim mean? It means lifnai v'lifnim. It means in the innermost sanctum, in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So in other words, according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is true only of what goes on in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Meaning to say, if you accidentally applied the blood of the goat before the blood of the bull in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, there the order will invalidate. Doing it out of order will invalidate the entire process. But something that's done, even if it's something done in the Bigdei Lavan, even if it's done in the white garment special for Yom Kippur, but it's something done outside. So he gives an example. He said, Rashi says, for example, Kigon Hagrala, Vidui, for example, the assignment of the Sa'ir LaAzazel and the Sa'ir LaShem. When he assigns the two goats, each one to its respective destiny. Vidui, the performance of the confessions over the different animals. Ushfichat Shirayim. Okay? And the pouring out of the leftover blood that he does on the outer altar, like we talked about yesterday. And also the Matanot HaParochet, Mizbeach HaZahav, all of the applications of blood that happen in the Kodesh, not the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Anything other than the Kodesh HaKodeshim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's done out of order, just keep on going. However, in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, it has to be exactly right. Rabbi Nechemia disagrees. Rabbi Nechemia omer b'med dvarim amurim b'dvarim manasim b'vigdei lavan. Anything done in the white garments, Rabbi Nechemia says, ben mibifnim bebi bachutz, whether it's inside or outside. Aval b'dvarim anasim b'vigdei zahav mibachutz ma she'asa asui. He says anything that's done in the golden clothing outside. In other words, anything that's part of the regular service. It's not part of unique to the Yom Kippur service, because the distinction between the white garments and the golden garments is pretty much essentially is that the golden garments are for the service that happens every day, and it just happens to be Yom Kippur today. Versus the things that are unique to Yom Kippur are all done in Bigdei Lavan. Or you could put it another way. Anything that has some connection to what goes on in the Kodesh HaKodeshim is done in the Bigdei Lavan. Okay? Anything that has no connection to what goes on in the Kodesh HaKodeshim is done with the Bigdei Zahav, with the golden garments. That's pretty much, that's the distinction more precisely. Okay?
Inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, only the Kohen Gadol would know that.
Right, so he would have to go and do it over again.
If he doesn't know it,
then we got other problems, I guess. He has to know it. No, you're right. There's nobody supervising. There's nobody camera in there watching. So, what's an example of Bigdei Zahav Mibachutz? Kigon Elo ve'el ha'am. That he brings a ram for an olah, and he brings also an ayil, he brings also a ram that's for the people, which is combined with the musaf. That is done in Bigdei Zahav. She'ekdim lehen otzat kafu machta. Let's say, for example, he went while he was in the white garments and he went and took out the kafu machta. He took out the implements that he used for the ketoret before doing his ram and the ram of the people. So he did the wrong order. So since he did the wrong order with respect to offering his ram, which is offered in the golden garments, even according to Rabbi Nechemia, that out of order is not going to invalidate the offering of the ram. We're not so concerned. But anything done in the white garments, meaning anything done in the white garments means it has a connection to the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Not directly, not necessarily is it taking place in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, but it has a connection to it. Because even the applications of blood on the parochet, the applications of blood on the golden altar, okay, the offering of the Sa'ir Lachatat, all of these things connect to the Kodesh HaKodeshim in some way, because the blood ultimately also is in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. It's part of that whole service. It's not completely disconnected. So that's why he says all of these things, if they're out of order, will be invalidated. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, only the actual Kodesh HaKodeshim stuff will be invalidated if it's done out of order. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, they both derive their respective positions from the same pasuk. It says this will be for you for an eternal statute, achat b'shana, once a year. So the word chukat olam is always interpreted to mean something fixed. Rashi says, kiktiv chuka le'ikuva. Okay? When it says chuka, fixed, meaning it can't be done in a different order than what's prescribed. And it says achat b'shana, once a year, meaning that what is fixed here, what is unchangeable, is that which happens once a year. We turn to Amud Bet. Rabbi Yehuda savar makom shemitkaprin bo pam achat b'shana. Rabbi Yehuda says, what does it mean achat b'shana? What does it mean the thing that you can't change is what's once a year? The place you go into only once a year, which is the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So only things that happen in the Kodesh HaKodeshim are invalidated by being done out of order. Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Nechemia says it's not the place that's entered into, it's things that are done only once a year. So Rashi says ben amakom ben abigadim, meaning the Kohen Gadol only wears the white garments once a year. So anything he does in those white garments, which are the once-a-year garments, has to be done in the proper order. Anything he does in the golden garments, even if something in the white garments was done before them, it's okay. The golden garment stuff is different. But the stuff that's done in the white garments has to be internally consistent according to the proper order, says Rabbi Nechemiah, because achat pashana means the things that you do once a year, not the place that you go once a year. The things you do once a year. And now the Gemara asks, Atur the Rabbi Yehuda makom ketiv? Does it say place in the pasuk? How could Rabbi Yehuda assume that achat bashana means a place? It says once a year. It's talking about the amount of time, not the place. Ela hainu ta'amid Rabbi Yehuda. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda interprets like this: ketiv zot. It says zot v'hayita zot lachem lechukat olam. Right? It says that this should be uchtiv achat, and the pasuk emphasizes once. Chad lema'ute bigdei lavan mibachutz, v'chad lema'ute bigdei zahav. He says each one is coming to tell you, each one is coming to limit the chok, to limit the area in which order is indispensable. The first pasuk of zot, v'hayita zot lachem, is to tell you that things done in the bigdei lavan outside of the kodesh HaKodashim will not be invalidated if they're done out of order. And the word achat comes to teach you that things done even in the bigdei zahav, in the golden garments, if they're done out of order, will not be invalidated as a result. So he has two pasukim. One to exclude things done in the white garments, and one thing to exclude those things that are done in the golden garments, leaving us only with one thing, the Kodesh HaKodashim entry, that must be done precisely according to order. Rabbi Nechemiah chad lema'otei bigdei zahav v'chad lema'otei shirayim delo me'akvei. And Rabbi Nechemiah says, I also agree that there are two pasukim. Zot is a limiter, and achat is a limiter. One is limiting anything done in bigdei zahav, meaning that the things done in bigdei zahav, it doesn't matter if they're done out of order. It won't invalidate them with respect to themselves or with respect to the white garment things. They can be done out of order. However, the second pasuk of achat is coming lema'utei shirayim, to tell you that the pouring of the leftover blood on the outside of the altar is not considered to be is not considered part of this. So even though he pours the shirayim, even though he pours the leftover blood out on the outer altar, in other words, after he applies the blood in the Kodesh HaKodashim, and he applies the blood on the parochet, and he applies the blood on the Mizbeach HaZahav, then he goes out and he pours the rest of the blood, like we learned yesterday, on the base of the altar. And we saw yesterday it was a machloket, southern base, western base. Okay, he pours it on the base. So what is so that part, he says, if it's done out of order, it's okay. So meaning, if he applied all of the blood to everything, and then he forgot to pour out the rest of the blood on the outer altar, he went and did the next step of the avodah instead. Changed it to the golden garments, did the other thing, and said, oy vey, I forgot to pour out, and then he changed back. It won't invalidate, because the pouring out of the shirayim is considered an added thing. It's not considered essential to the avodah. So even according to Rabbi Nechemiah, that everything done in the white garments must be done in order, and if it's done out of order, it's invalidated. Even he will agree that the pouring out of the shirayim could be out of order. Okay? So, as Rashi says on the side, if something later than them is done before them, it won't invalidate them. Okay, even though they're done in the white garments. Now, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda will say, what kind of an inconsistent position is that? Right? You came along and told me that it's white. It's about the white garments. Okay, I can respect that. We differ. We can agree to disagree, right? Rabbi Yehuda says, you told me it was white garments. I said it's about the place, Kodesh HaKodashim. That is really a unique thing. Nobody ever goes in the Kodesh HaKodashim the rest of the year. That must be done exactly according to order. You said no, it's anything done in the bigdei lavan. Well, that's very reasonable, but the only thing is there's one exception that you're making. The pouring out of the shirayim. The pouring out of the leftover blood on the base of the altar. Why should there be an exception? Either everything done in the white garments is fixed, or everything is not fixed. You can't have it both ways. That's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. Now we come to the next. Now the Gemara goes further than this. Kedetani, as it says in the Braita. In other words, the whole what Rabbi Yehuda is saying is that about the pouring out of the shirayim, that either you have to that you have to take a position, yes or no on that, is in a Braita. V'chila mikaperet hakodesh im kiper kila v'im lo kiper lo kila dever Rabbi Akiva. So this is a kind of a very what's the word, satun. assume. It's very difficult to understand on the surface what it's trying to say. It's not clear exactly what the meaning is, but we're going to just explain it literally, and then we'll get into the details. So, V'chila mikaperet hakodesh is the pasuk. It says, when he finishes atoning for the Kodesh. Atoning, but this is talking about at the end of Yom Kippur. Right? I'm saying in the service of Yom Kippur. V'chila mikaperet hakodesh. V'yat oil moed v'yat hamizbeach. Right? It's part of the applications of of what he does inside. So, V'im kiper kila, if he atoned, he finished. V'im lo kiper lo kila, that's what Rabbi Akiva says. And if he didn't atone, he didn't finish. This is what Rabbi Akiva says. Okay, Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda said to him, Mipnei ma lo nemar im kila kiper, v'im lo kila lo kiper. Why don't you read it in order and say what it means is, if he finished, he atoned. If he didn't finish, he didn't atone. Shim chiser achat min hamatanot lo asav lo klum. Because if he lacks one of the applications of blood, he hasn't done anything. In other words, v'chila means it has to be complete. He has to completely atone, meaning he has to do all of the blood applications on that altar in order to satisfy the requirement. He can't just do 1 out of the 4 or 2 out of the 4. Now it turns out that, so on the surface it sounds like Rabbi Akiva is disagreeing with that. Okay, but what we're going to see is that really they don't disagree. They just they disagree about something else. Okay, so va'amrinan mai benayu, and in Masechet Zevachim, okay, this discussion comes up. They're arguing about the pasuk, but it's not clear what they're arguing about. What is the argument here? How to read the pasuk? Whether it means if he atoned, he completed, and if he didn't atone, he didn't complete, or if he completed, he atoned, and if he didn't complete, he didn't atone. What does that mean? Right? What was it trying to say? So Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi argue about this in Masechet Zevachim. Chadamar mashma'u dorashini kabenayu. Chadamar shirayim me'akve ikabenayu. That one says, what is the machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda? It's mashma'ut dorashin, meaning they don't argue about anything. They agree that every one of the applications of blood, there are 4, right, on the corners of that golden altar, all of them are ma'akev. They're all necessary. Everybody agrees. They're just arguing about how to interpret the pasuk. So Rabbi Akiva reads the pasuk, im kiper kila, meaning if he did his entire atonement process, kila, then he's finished. Im lo kiper lo kila, if he didn't do the entire atonement process, all 4 of the applications, then lo kila, he didn't finish. And Rabbi Yehuda is saying, no, read the pasuk the other way. Im kila kiper, if he finished, he atoned. Because that's a better way of reading it. Meaning, if he finished all 4, he atoned. Im lo kila lo kiper. If he didn't finish all 4, he didn't atone. In other words, they're trying to say, how can we read the pasuk to get this? We have the same message, which is all 4 of the applications are necessary. The question is how to read the pasuk most in a way that expresses that message the best.
That's not what they were arguing about. They were arguing about if you do something out of order.
No. This is a different thing. Different thing.
Aren't there 5?
This is a segue. Yeah, well, the top of it, but they're talking about the.
We're not talking about that argument.
We are, but we're not. So hold on to that for a second. Okay, we segued for a second because Rabbi Nehemiah suggested, well, the pouring out of the shirayim on the altar, that doesn't count.
Okay.
And Rabbi Yehuda is saying, why doesn't it count? What do you mean? What do you mean it doesn't count? So it says who that it doesn't count, right? So and now the Braita is showing us that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the pouring out of the leftover blood is part of the essential service. Okay? And that's why he didn't buy Rabbi Nehemiah's distinction to say that, it's not part of it. And we're going to see how it gets to that. Okay? So, in Masechet Zevachim, there's this machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda. According to the first interpretation of the machloket, there's really no machloket. They both agree that pouring out the leftover blood is not an essential part of the service. They're arguing about how to read the pasuk to emphasize that you have to get all 4 of the corners with the applications of blood in order to fulfill the mitzvah. They're just wording, they're wording it differently, but they actually don't disagree. That's the first version. However, according to the second version, no, they do disagree about shirayim me'akveh ika benayhu, whether the shirayim are me'akvim. In other words, according to Rabbi Akiva, he says, im kiper kila, as long as he applied the blood to the altar, he's finished. Meaning, he doesn't have to, even if he forgets to or fails to pour the blood out on the altar, he's okay. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, im kila kiper. If he finished the process, then he gets the atonement. Meaning that if he didn't finish the process and pour the blood out on the outer altar, it's no good.
And then it's part of the
But that means it's part of the service. You can't distinguish between the two according to Rabbi Yehuda. What do you mean that pouring the blood out on the altar outside is not part of the service? It is. If kila kiper, only if he did the whole thing does he get the atonement. And what did we say? So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda is not going to accept, at least according to this interpretation of Rabbi Yehuda, right? There are two interpretations of Rabbi Yehuda. One in which he agrees with Rabbi Akiva that the pouring out of the blood on the altar is not essential. But the second view says no, he disagrees. He holds that that the pouring out of that leftover blood on the altar is part of the service. You can't dispense with it, and therefore it should have to be in order according to Rabbi Nechemia. Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachid. Did Rabbi Yochanan really say this? Va'amar Rabbi Yochanan Tanav Rabbi Nechemia ki divrei Omer Shirayim Me'akivei. Because Rabbi Yochanan was trying to come along and say that didn't Rabbi Yochanan himself say that according to Rabbi Nechemia, Shirayim me'akve. Shirayim are in fact indispensable. So how can you tell me that Rabbi Nechemia is excluding? In other words, Rabbi Nechemia is telling you that if he did the pouring of the blood on the outside altar out of order, it's not ma'akev. It doesn't ruin it. But doesn't Rabbi Yochanan himself say that Rabbi Nechemia is the one that says Shirayim me'akve? That pouring out the blood on the outside altar is necessary. It's just as much a part of a service as applying the blood to the altar inside. And so on the Rashi says, Rabbi Nechemia Shirayim l'ma'akvei ki dekamrin le'el shnei mekra had darashu. In other words, that this whole thing came to the conclusion that Rabbi Nechemia said, that, in other words, Rabbi Yochanan said they're both interpreting the same pasuk. Rabbi Yehuda excludes two things, and Rabbi Nechemia excludes two things, right? Rabbi Nechemia, one of the things he excludes is the pouring out of the altar the pouring out of the blood on the outside altar. But Rabbi Yochanan himself said that Rabbi Nechemia holds that Shirayim are ma'akvim. That Shirayim, actually the pouring out of the blood, is absolutely intrinsic to the service and you can't dispense with it. And therefore it should have to be in order. And Rabbi Yehuda, according to at least one version, is also holding that. So in the end, Kashya, the Gemara says we don't know the solution to that. That's a good question. Rabbi Yochanan seems to be in contradiction because on one hand he's telling you that Rabbi Nechemia says we don't know the solution.
The solution of what to do, or the solution of what was the outcome of that argument.
Kashya usually means it's different than tiyufta. Tiyufta means we reject. Kashya means it's difficult. In other words,
we don't know how the essence of their argument.
No. We don't really know how Rabbi Yochanan could have said on one hand that Rabbi Nechemia says that the pouring out of the blood on the outer altar is not ma'akev. In other words, is not like any of the other services done in the white garments. Okay. But then at the same time, Rabbi Yochanan himself said that Rabbi Nechemia says that pouring out the blood on the outside altar is intrinsic to the service, and without it, the service is invalid.
So given that,
how can you say that Rabbi Nechemia on one hand says that pouring out of the blood on the outside altar is intrinsic to the service, which Rabbi Yochanan does say, and then at the same time tell me that Rabbi Nechemia is going to use that extra pasuk to say that pouring out of the blood on the outer altar in the wrong order won't invalidate the service? Well, why not? It's done with the white garments, and you said that it's intrinsic to the service. So if you want to say that Rabbi Nechemia holds it's not intrinsic to the service, it's an added extra, fine, then we can see why he distinguishes. But if Rabbi Yochanan himself said that Rabbi Nechemia agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that it's intrinsic to the service, so how can you make a distinction between that and any other part of the service? So kashya means it's not a knockdown, drag-out argument, because you could immediately see a window of opportunity to solve it. It's just not smooth. Like you could say that, well, Rabbi Nechemia does hold that it's necessary for the service, but he holds that somehow it has a lesser status than the other things that are necessary for the service. In other words, you could try to solve it, but it's kashya, it's difficult. Okay? And it's left with that. Rabbi Chanina says, normally, what does the Kohen Gadol have to do? He first has to slaughter the par. He first slaughters the bull, receives the blood, leaves it with somebody to stir while he goes, takes the ketoret into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, and then he comes back and gets the blood, right? But he slaughtered the par before taking the ketoret and putting it into the pan with his two hands. If he did it out of order, if he first took the ketoret, if he said, listen, this is just not practical, guys. It just doesn't make sense. It would be much better if if instead I took the ketoret in my hands, put it into the pan and all that, then I'll bring it inside, and then you know what? I'll slaughter the bull and take its blood and take it right in. Why should I have to leave it with somebody to stir it while I take care of the ketoret, right? No good. If he did it out of order, it's invalid. So meaning to say, if he didn't slaughter the bull first, and he took the ketoret, he put it in the pan, he went into the Kodesh HaKodashim, it's no good. He has to do it over again because he has to slaughter the bull before he brings the ketoret into the Kodesh HaKodashim, and before he even gathers the ketoret.
Which means that it's in association with the place itself.
So Kiman, the Gemara asks, Dilok Rabbi Yehuda. This is obviously not in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda. Why not? Because didn't he say that only things that are done mibifnim, only things that are done inside the Kodesh HaKodashim are included in the rule that if they're done out of order, they're invalidated. And here what we're talking about is that the slaughtering of the bull was done out of order, right? In other words, it wasn't done in the right order. It was supposed to be done. I mean, they were both done out of order, really, but because the taking of the ketoret was before the bull, the slaughtering of the bull was supposed to be before the ketoret, so you're doing them out of order. And yet, these activities are done outside of the Kodesh HaKodashim. They're not done inside the Kodesh HaKodashim. Because the slaughtering of the bull is done outside, the taking of the ketoret is done outside, and yet he's saying that if you did it in the wrong order, it's no good.
But it's associated with what's going on inside. But he doesn't hold associated. He holds just place, right?
Right. So, in other words, if you put something, since you're putting the ketoret before the slaughtering of the bull, it's considered doing the bull out of order. Right? In other words, the bull, if you're hikdim, in other words, if you put something before it that wasn't supposed to be before it, that's the invalidation. So you went in with the ketoret before slaughtering the bull, so you messed up slaughtering the bull. But the slaughtering of the bull happens outside the Beit HaMikdash. Outside of the Kodesh HaKodashim, so why does Rabbi Yehuda hold that it's indispensable? The answer is, Afilu Teim Rabbi Yehuda tzorech panim kifnim dami. That anything that's for the need of the inside is like the inside. In other words, we know that where is the Ketoret heading to? It's heading into the Kodesh HaKodashim. We know that where is the blood of the par heading to? It's heading inside the Kodesh HaKodashim. And
that was an easy way to solve.
Right. So therefore, even though the process itself of the gathering of the ketoret, and for instance, because it's not necessarily saying that he brought it in, it's saying that it was, in other words, he took the ketoret in his hand and he put it into the container, and then he went and he slaughtered the bull. Okay? Even if he didn't go into the Kodesh HaKodashim yet, it doesn't matter. Since these things are related to Kodesh HaKodashim, because the blood of the par is going into the Kodesh HaKodashim, this ketoret is going to Kodesh HaKodashim, he did it out of order.
That's Rabbi Yehuda?
That's Rabbi Yehuda.
Was that his position from before when you were saying somebody holds it's the place, somebody holds...
Yeah, he's the one who holds it's the place.
The place, not associated with the place.
So but since these things, the destination are the place.
I know, I understand that.
Right.
But I thought somebody else had that position.
No, because Rabbi Nehemiah says that anything done in the white garments,
right.
So which doesn't necessarily mean associated with the place.
Association with, but that's how you.
I'm just saying the time, right? It's a type of association, but it's not something that necessarily is the destination of the place. In other words, he'll say that the blood that you sprinkle, let's say, on the golden altar, according to Rabbi Yehuda, well, that's something done outside the Kodesh HaKodashim. And that blood's never going into the Kodesh HaKodashim.
It has nothing to do with anything.
Whereas Rabbi Nehemiah will say, yeah, but since you're wearing the white garments, it means it's part of that whole entity. Right? That's the way it goes. Yeah, so, Tanan, imad shelo gavar matanot shebifnim nishpach adam yevidam achar v'yachzor v'yazeh batchila mibifnim. So it says that if the Kohen Gadol was applying the blood in the Kodesh HaKodashim and the blood spilled, he has to bring other blood and he has to apply the blood starting all over again now. In other words, he's actually going to have to go slaughter another par or another sa'ir and start all over again. So the question is, but wait a second, if you're telling me that he's going to have to go and slaughter another bull, but wait a second, the slaughtering of the bull has to take place before the ketoret. And this person already brought the ketoret. Now he's applying the blood of the bull that was, in other words, it was like this, he slaughtered the bull, brought the ketoret, now he's supposed to apply the blood of the bull and the blood spills. He can't just, if he slaughters another bull now, he slaughtered the bull out of order because he had already brought the ketoret. So that's no good. So it says,
that would be no good
really,
to everyone.
Right, he should have to go back and slaughter the bull. He should have to go back and do the ketoret all over again. I'm sorry, he should have to go back, slaughter the bull, then take the ketoret in his hands, bring it in all over again, and then bring the blood in all over again. He has to do the whole thing all over again. So the Gemara says, on Samach Aleph Amud Aleph, B'ketoret lo kamayre. We're not talking about the ketoret here. You're right. You're absolutely right. If the blood spills inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, then he has to start all over. He has to go back, slaughter another bull, take the ketoret again, bring the ketoret in again, apply the blood again. He's going to have to do the whole thing all over again. That's true. It's not talking about that, but it's true. Amar Ula says, Sa'ir shachto kodem matan damo shel par lo asav lo klum. Similarly, what was the other thing? That when the Kohen Gadol brings in the ketoret, and then he brings in the blood of the bull. Now the bull was slaughtered before the ketoret was gathered. So it's slaughter of bull, bringing of ketoret, bringing in blood of bull. After it brings in blood of bull, what does he do? He runs and slaughters goat, receives blood, applies blood. Okay? Now what happens if he said, listen, I'm running back and forth too much here, Why don't I just do this? I'll slaughter the bull and I'll slaughter the bull and I'll also slaughter the goat now.
And bring both bloods in.
I'll do the ketoret, then I'll bring the bull blood, and then I'll bring the goat blood. Why do I have to slaughter the goat after I'm in the middle of applying the blood of the bull? I have to go slaughter a goat now. I mean, why should I have to do that? Let me do all the shechita at once. So it says if you did that, it's no good. Lo asav lo klum. Okay? Tenan, it says in the Mishnah, Hikdim dama sa'ir le dama par, yachzor v'yazemi dama sa'ir, achar dama par. But wait a second, Ula. It says in the Mishnah that if he did the dama sa'ir before the dama par, in other words, he applied the blood of the goat before he applied the blood of the bull, he has to go back and apply the blood of the goat again. So that way it will be after the blood of the bull, because he did sa'ir. He did goat, bull. Now if he does goat, so he's done goat after bull. But wait a second. But according to you, Ula, but according to you, if he applied the blood of the goat before he applied the blood of the bull, what does that mean? Obviously, he slaughtered the goat before he applied the blood of the bull. And you just said that he has to apply the blood of the bull in the Kodesh HaKodeshim before he slaughters the goat.
I mean, he has to slaughter another bull?
So that would be what it means. In other words, if he slaughtered the goat before he applied the blood of the bull, he's going to have to start the whole process over again. Right? So, or at least he'll have to apply the blood of the bull and then slaughter another goat. Yeah. So how can you tell me that he applied the blood of the goat before applying the blood of the bull? That's physically impossible, because he can't have slaughtered the goat before he applies the blood of the bull in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So Tirgama Ula b'matanot shebahechal v'chen amar Rav Afes b'matanot shebahechal. So there's a very simple explanation for this, says Ula. It's not talking about the blood applications inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim, because if we were talking about the blood applications in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, it's true. You don't even have the blood of the goat before you've applied the blood of the bull, and you can't have the blood of the goat before you have the blood of the bull. It's impossible. So what is it talking about? It's talking about the ones that are done in the Kodesh, because the way that the order goes is slaughter bull, bring ketoret, bring blood of bull, slaughter goat, bring blood of goat into Kodesh HaKodeshim, then bring blood of bull to Kodesh, blood of Sa'ir to Kodesh. They're already slaughtered. So it's true that it's impossible to have the blood of the goat before the blood of the bull is applied in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, because the goat hasn't even been slaughtered until the blood of the bull is applied. However, on the parochet, both of them have already been slaughtered by the time you get to the parochet in the Kodesh. So by the time you get to the parochet, you have blood of bull and blood of goat already available. So you could hypothetically apply them out of order without having to slaughter a new goat. You could apply them out of order, and you apply the blood of the goat to the parochet, and then you realize, whoops, I messed up. So then you have to do bull and then goat again in order to satisfy the correct order.